T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to episode 13 of Kush'S Korner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight we have on Erick Hernandez from Basuca Ectotherms to talk about his success breeding Tanimbar scrub pythons amongst the other species that he works with, but we will definitely be having a scrub-heavy conversation. Before we get into it, as always, USARC. If you are not already a member, please check out USARC. They are the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to pursue this way of life. USARC.org is the website to check out all the information about USARC. And if you are not already a member, please become a member. As an industry, we have strength in numbers, and the more people we have behind our causes, the better. And we are also brought to you by GS Reptiles, Gary Scavino, one of the OGs of the arboreal game, and one of the best reptile-related YouTube channels to follow if you are into green tree pythons, emerald tree boas, Madagascar tree boas, carpet pythons, Boland's pythons, amongst a host of other things that Gary dabbles in. Please check out GS Reptiles and GS Reptiles on YouTube. We are also brought to you by Juggernaut Reptiles, Elijah Armas, one of the leaders in the blood and short-tail python game, as well as ball pythons, anacondas, Sanzinia, amongst some other things that he works with. You can check out Juggernaut Reptiles on all forms of social media if those types of things interest you. We are also brought to you by Blake's Exotic Feeders. For anybody here in the United States that is looking to feed quail to their reptiles, please check out Blake's Exotic Feeders. They raise everything right here in the United States, so you know you're getting a high-quality product from a U.S.-based supplier. And we're also brought to you by the Reptile Super Show, the LA Reptile Super Show and Pet Fairs coming up the last month of June. It is one of the largest reptile expos of the year and is also conjoined with one of the largest pet expos in the country. So not only will you be able to see reptiles, you'll be able to see all different sorts of pets. So if you are in the area or looking to travel, please check out the Reptile Super Show. Go to their website to check out all of the information. And here we are. This is definitely an exciting episode for me. Obviously everyone knows that I'm scrub python obsessed, and one of the last pieces of completing my scrub python puzzle were the Tanimbar scrub pythons. Now I get to talk to the guy who's having the most success with them, and probably of anyone in the United States right now. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, Erick, how's it going?
Doing good. How are you doing? Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. This will be an awesome episode. After posting that we were doing this, I got a lot of people that were pretty excited to hear from you. So this should be awesome.
Good. Hopefully I won't disappoint.
I doubt that. So what's your background in this, man? What got you into the reptiles, and then what kind of led you to the point of getting into the scrub pythons?
So I grew up in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised there. So I grew up around lizards and anoles and catching local snakes or native snakes. And I stumbled watching TV. I was always nature oriented, right? And
Sure.
One of the things I really liked doing in the mornings as a kid was watching nature documentaries. First thing in the morning, for some reason, they had them up on Animal Planet before like all their run stuff happened. Mm-hmm. And then from there, like most of us, Steve Irwin happened, and the snakes, and then the internet started being a thing. And then I'm like, oh, I can actually keep snakes at home. In Puerto Rico, you can't keep native species. So okay. I want to keep the one common snake that was coming into the market in Puerto Rico was a type of garter snake. I don't remember which species. So
Okay.
I got my mom into buying me one of those. It escaped because most things escape when you're a kid. Iguanas were a popular pet. I had one of those also. Now they're everywhere in the island, unfortunately.
Sure.
What's another one? And then a ball python. When I was a teenager, I convinced my mom, hey, I'm not going to have a car. I don't really care about driving, which is true, actually. I'd rather have a snake than have a car. So she did buy me a snake, and then later bought me a car. Driving around. That ball python, like most ball pythons at the time, that was early 2000, was well caught. I remember taking the stick out of it. And didn't survive. Then a few years later, probably last year or I got
Sorry to cut you off, but the audio is a little bit choppy right now. Or is there maybe an issue with the headphone jack or something?
it is all plugged. Can you hear me?
Now it sounds good. For a minute,
Okay.
we kind of lost you.
Oh, that's weird. So my last year of high school, I think, or like, yeah, I got a better pair of ball pythons and they survived. But at that time, I moved to the United States to go to college, have to give them away. While all that was happening, I found NPR forums. Shout out to the Morelia people in the chat, I'm sure. And they got me really interested in carpet pythons. And one of the really big drivers to moving to the United States was the possibility of owning carpet pythons and having all these other species that I couldn't keep. College was just second. It was just there. I was more like, hey, I can keep all these things. Then later, when I got into college, the first thing I did when I had the opportunity, I got a ball python that I got for free and a couple other snakes. Like, nope, I'm gonna go and start getting what I actually wanted. Mm-hmm. And I got jungle carpet python at my first Tinley Park show. I think it was 2008.
Okay.
2008, 2009. I got a Domeros boa. And then from there, I kind of started sitting back and thinking what I wanted to do at that time with the carpet pythons. I was very carpet python oriented and heavy for a long time. And so I started actually tuning in what animals I really wanted to buy and from who and what side projects I wanted to have, because always my carpet pythons were going to be like the main project, and then I would have other like side projects.
Sure.
And at the time, scrub pythons were under Morelia. Yeah. So another thing to add into my collection was like, yeah, I really like the scrub pythons. Barnecks are beautiful. I like the ones that are really defined on their necks, big buffy heads, but they were too big.
Sure.
I did get a wild-caught Clastolepis. I think it was probably my second year college, and it was in really bad shape. It had the warts, the sores in the skin also, and it didn't last 24 hours.
Yeah.
I sent that one off. They sent me another one. I don't even remember the importer or none of that. And someone then contacted me and told me that snake was stolen, and then they wanted it back. So I gave it back. They gave me my money back. And from that point forward until 2016, I didn't keep any scrub pythons.
Wow.
Then before 2016, I started thinking, okay, I want to get back into the scrub python game. And as we were talking before the show started, I really wanted to get back into Clastolepis Moluccans, but they're just not there at all. Yeah. So what other option did I have? The Tanimbars. And a lot of people were keeping them. They were really difficult to breed, but they were coming in so-and-so numbers. Yeah. Dave Mallory was bringing some, and I know Nick Mutton were having clutches at that time. So I contacted Dave Mallory, and Dan Mallory, sorry, and he was bringing a female over. So I got that, and then I contacted Nick Mutton, and coincidentally, he was having a clutch, and he had a spare male, so it worked out great. So I got my first, and I still have them. Pair was Damilary female Walcott, Xanthic, Axanthic, sorry, het for patternless, and a male Xanthic patternless from Nick Mutton. And that one was captive born.
Okay.
And a few years later, after that, KJ contacted me. He's like, "Hey, dude, do you want to do a breeding loan?" That was after I had my first clutch.
Okay.
And then he sent the male over, and we had another successful clutch a year after that. And then he's like, "Hey, just give me some money from proceeds, whatever, and you can keep the boy." So I have his boy also here with me, and he is a Xanthic patterned boy.
Okay.
And that's the group that I have right now, which is a 2.1.
Okay. Nice. So then your first two clutches had different sires.
Yes. Yep. Well, the second clutch, they're together, so I keep them.
Okay.
Quick. So this stack right here, it's them.
Okay.
So 2 visions, and then the bottom it's like an AP, about a 3x2.
Cool.
So I keep them there, and they are actually joined together. They have portals between them. So whenever I see the female, it's receptive, or I just want them to walk around or not walk around, go in between them, I open the portals and they go in and out. So the first clutch for sure was Nick Mutton's, because I didn't have that male yet. The second clutch, both males were with the female, and I saw locked of both. Okay. Same thing with this recent clutch. I saw lock of both. One male's more dominant than the other one, but they both had opportunities with the female.
Was it separately or at the same time you would open up all the
same time?
Okay.
If I saw that one male was dominating the other one, it's not necessarily like a fight, but they were pushing each other, or he was like forcefully sniffing at him, for lack of a better word, I would kind of separate them and give them their space and just give the more aggressive male the female, kind of thing. But other than that, they had free range.
That's interesting, because like with the Boland's pythons, people who are having success now are using multiple males at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I believe Chuck Poland did as well with his Halmaheras. Yes. Mm-hmm. And you have a very similar kind of setup to what he did with his Halmaheras. That's really interesting. I mean, you'd have to assume that combat behavior would really, jazz up that dominant male. And would you see copulation like shortly thereafter?
I see development in the female more than copulation. So Chuck is someone that I did talk about a lot when I started introducing the all of them together and more. I don't say they live together. They don't cohab.
Sure.
But they have opportunities to be together. Yeah. Right. So I talked to him about that, and he's like, "No, I've never seen aggression." And honestly, the aggression that I see it's not like carpet pythons where they start rolling and doing all that and bashing each other, but it's more like pushing, and you can see that one male is uncomfortable being with the other male type deal, right? Yeah. And soon after that, you see the female changing in her behavior, and that's what I look for. The female starts wanting more food, or she starts basking in a different spot. She started in the morning when I come in and see them. Oh, she's out basking. That she's usually not doing that. So that's my cue of like, okay, let me put them together, or let me give them a bigger meal, because that's part of. I think it's key, like finding when to give her that big meal that she needs.
Yeah. So would you say that a food cycle is like your primary trigger that you use?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And as much as I guess you're willing to share, what's kind of your strategy and your philosophy with your food? Of course.
Cycle? Yeah. It's not a secret. I don't want these to just be me. I don't have 10 of them and I'm gonna, hoard them all, right?
Yeah.
And I know I haven't released quote unquote any of them, but I only had 4, right? And I want everyone to have them. I want them to be as common as the southern scrubs are being bred.
Yeah.
So what let's go back to my first clutch. My first clutch, I treated them pretty cold. They were in the low 60s sometimes at night.
Dang.
I remember, so before I moved to Minnesota, I lived in Iowa in a house, and that house had some cold spots. So she got, and I was 2020. I wasn't even thinking of, 2020, 2019. I don't remember. Anyways, one of those two. And I wasn't even planning on breeding her at all. But I noticed that she started getting big, and she started gaining mass. So I bred her, and I kept thinking about where they're from, right? They're an island dwarf species that they're used to seasonal inflows of birds and animals coming in, right?
Yeah.
And another person that I kept thinking of and I listened to was Lisa Farina when she was doing the white lip pythons. One thing that she focused on, there you go, was food cycling. What do you do before I dropped the temps? I fed her almost weekly a small meal, meaning a small mice or like a chick. Or
okay, so
chicks,
really
small meal but that was every week for like 6 weeks.
Right? Okay, so like what time of year did that start? Like late?
I'm doing that from October till probably so 6 weeks. So October through November, maybe it's a little bit, but not much. Cut down, and then a month of no food, and then cold nights. The days are still warm. They still have their heat spots during the day, and usually the time of how long that heat is, I don't think really matters, as long as they have that cold night drop, right?
Sure.
And I also like lamps. I have 2 of the vision cages are heated by lamps, and the bottom one it's heated by a heating pad on top.
Okay.
Gradient heat panel. After I cut the food and they get cold for a week, I start putting them together and seeing her behavior, and I start seeing that she starts looking for food and being very like attentive and aggressive towards food.
Okay.
So now I changed to feeding her a big meal, like a really big meal. So for her, I would feed her a small chick, which is like the size of a small, medium-ish rat.
Okay.
And just introduce the boys, see what they do, and then from there, I see what she's telling me. Does she wants more food? Does she wants to be colder? Does she wants to be warmer? Are the boys interested? And then I just read her signs and the boys' signs, and then from there it happens.
So we got a question here related.
Yeah, of course.
Brandon wants to know how cold you got down to, and then do you think humidity has anything to do with their cycle?
So in my other house, humidity was pretty low.
Okay.
So humidity in low, I'm saying like 30s. So it's pretty low.
Okay.
I never sprayed anything. I just make sure that they had water, and if they're on a shed cycle, I make sure they're a little damp, so they don't have stuck sheds. But I don't really watch their humidity. In terms of coolness, so that first year I went really cold, right? Low 60s.
Yeah.
My second clutch, I skipped a year. That was after KJ sent me his mail. That year didn't work. I skipped a year. So 2023, yep, that was my second one. That year, I focused more on what I was doing, not the temperatures. Temperatures still got cold, let's say mid to upper 60s, instead of being really cold. But I focused more on what I was doing in terms of food. When I was offering it, the pause in food, no food, right? and what was she telling me? And then this year, didn't care about temperatures. This room barely got into 73 at night.
Okay.
And then I 100% focused on food.
Okay.
Gave her 6 to 8 weeks of small meals, continuous meals, and then a pause for a month and a half, no food, and the big meals after that. And now in the warmer seasons, I'm just doing maintenance feed. I don't feed them that regularly, 15 to 20 days, sort of. A lot of bird prey, especially now in the warm season.
Okay.
In the not off season, but when I'm building them up or giving them big meals, then I would feed some rodent prey. But
Okay.
now in the warm season, when I'm kind of maintenance, I prefer to go into the bird prey, including anything I have in this room.
Okay. Interesting. So when you take them out of that cooling period and start feeding them the big meals, what interval are you working on as far as these bigger meals?
I see what she's telling me. So if I give her a meal in, let's say, 5 days later, or even like 4 days later, she's still cruising around and giving me the look, I give her another meal.
Okay.
And some people will be like, "Oh, that's a lot of food." Well, in my mind, she needs that amount of energy. She's building those follicles.
Yeah.
And if you're like, "Oh no," and I've done that with my carpet pythons, and I'm like, "Oh no, that's okay. She has fat storage, it's fine." But I don't give them that food that they need, and they don't produce. Same thing happened with this year. One of the Atlantic coastals, she did everything right, but I know I didn't feed her enough when she was developing, and she absorbed. She didn't do anything.
Interesting. Okay. So then from that point on, at this point you're getting locks once you're into that point. Okay. So when did she go off of food?
I stopped feeding her after I know she's visibly gravid. She's huge. Okay. She's dark. She's not looking for food as much. So I want to say 10 days after ovulation, she starts changing her patterns, and I think that's the key, right? Watching the patterns. And like Erick Burke says, you have to be the student of the serpent.
Yeah.
So I noticed she starts retrieving, not asking for food. And I totally stopped even thinking about giving her food after her prelay shed.
Sure. So, but up until ovulation, she continues to eat.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Yes. Interesting. Because I've with a couple different species of scrub python and different collections, I've heard, I have my experiences, and I've heard vastly different things from other people. So that's interesting. Okay. And then after that, pretty typical python progression up until
the prelay, like post-ovulation shed till eggs. It's a little bit longer. Usually it's like, I don't know, 22, 25 days for carpet pythons. They are 30, almost 40 days. My girl have done that. So it takes a little bit longer. And then another one that I've heard from other scrubs is that the incubation is long. For them, incubation has been 65 days, 65 days.
Must be nice.
Yeah, it is. You're still like, but it's nice.
Oh, it's the worst part. I absolutely hate it. I like obsessively stare at my eggs probably 10 times a day. The longest I've ever had one go is 95 days.
Whoa, that is long.
Yeah, I would say average is probably like 86.
That is really long.
But
my first time, so the first, I was only one egg that survived out of the 6 clutch. All of them, they didn't even look like they had veins. They were all shelled and they looked good from the outside, but they didn't have veins. And I said it and forgot it. And I went and did other stuff, and I came a week later, and it was day 60 or 62. So I wasn't even expecting anything. And I saw a little egg. I was like, oh, it's starting to hatch. So I cut it open to help him out, and the baby was dead in the egg. But the baby was severely kinked. So I think the baby tried to slit the egg, and then it just, didn't have the strength to actually come out.
Yeah.
So that's what, triggered me of like, oh no, it's a shorter incubation. So my next clutch, I actually did a slit at day 60 just to make sure that they were going to be okay. And even if there are any that were kinked, they had the opportunity to come out.
Yeah.
And I did have 2 that were severely kinked and didn't survive.
Okay. So how would you compare the size of a baby Tanimbar to like a baby carpet python? Because I have to imagine they're a lot smaller than other scrub pythons.
They are smaller. So I was going to pull one of the carpet pythons for comparison, but they're already too big. I think they're a little bit bigger than a hatchling carpet python.
Okay.
Maybe after a carpet python, after they've had their second shed, a couple meals and second shed, something like that. But they're still pretty small, and they have a cute big head and like kind of wonky looking, and aggressive as hell. They hate life. They absolutely hate life.
Yeah, that figures, because I feel like across the board, well, this might not be fair, but I mean, I guess you could also chime in with your experience, but I feel like Tanimbars, reputation-wise, would probably be considered the most aggressive of the scrub pythons. How are your adults?
KJ's adult. He is nice.
Okay.
I don't really handle any of my snakes. I don't know. I just don't. But he's never tried to bite. He's never tried to strike. I think he knows the difference between food and not food. My male, he knows who I am, right? And he knows when I'm doing stuff in his cage, but he doesn't necessarily like it, and I cannot touch him, and I can't really do much with him.
Okay.
He hasn't bitten me in a long time, but I don't really give him the opportunity. And then my female is really skittish, and all she wants to do is run away. But she's never also been aggressive. She's just been very, very skittish.
Okay.
And then the baby I have, he doesn't like anything. he strikes at anything and everything.
Yeah, that's kind of my experience too, is that they're far flightier than the rest of the scrub pythons.
Yep.
Amethystina, Clastolepis, even Halmaheras, they stand their ground. They're sooner to stand their ground and strike at you than they are to run away.
Yep.
But Tanimbars, boom, they're out. They're like a Timor python almost in that way.
And who knows? Maybe that has also something to do with it. I hardly, like I said, I hardly handle any of my animals. They know I'm there and they know my presence.
Sure.
But the stress levels of me touching them it's not there. So maybe that has something to do with it. That's something that I tried to be conscious about when I did get the Tanimbars. One person that I also looked up to was Yasser, and one thing that he always says is like stress levels, keep them low. Do shift boxes, only clean what you have to. Once you have the success that you think you have, if you want to play with F1s,
Sure. Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, that's how most of these things go. Like reticulated pythons were monsters back in the day, and now they're pets. And then, with some of these, like the Halmahera locality and stuff like that, these animals are not generally friendly snakes, like the big mainlands. I mean, I see that a lot in like the Barnecks and stuff like that. Even, some of these F1 animals are really, most of them are just, they're puppy dog tame. But I wonder from like an ecological standpoint, something about where they are and the predators, or, I don't really know much about that island, but is there something about their environment that makes them flightier, or is it just because they're a smaller snake? They're not.
It could be, right? They have to, if they're a smaller snake, they have to be defensive and they have to stand their ground in order to survive. Yep. Yeah.
So Lisa is asking if you have a vision for these Tanimbars, kind of how you do with your carpet pythons, as far as like a longevity thing. Do you have anything that you want to do in the long run with these guys particularly?
So right now I want to establish a group, another female, perhaps maybe a third female along the way, and actually have a rotation or breed them successfully every year. I guess I've done that, but I want to be a little bit more be able to actually be like, hey, do you want a Tanimbar? Yes, I got a Tanimbar. Actually, I can actually sell you one, because right now I can't really do that, right? I'm pretty much breeding for me, and I have a list that's really long. I'm sorry, everyone, I know. But I want to be to that point to be like, yes, you want a Tanimbar? Go to Erick Hernandez. He actually has some Tanibars. And then be able to help you or whoever has Tanibars and be like, hey, I'm in that stage. My female is doing X. Okay, yeah, I'll help you out. Do this. Or they're cruising too much. Or put them together. Or no, maybe it's one thing that I noticed this year that might have been an issue why some of my eggs don't look fertile. I noticed that my female was trying to hug the light way too much. So I'm like, well, I need a higher bulb.
Sure.
Because that maybe she didn't get as hot. So stuff like that we can all get together and be like, yes, these are the switches that I pulled, and you pulled these switches. Let's all help each other. That's what I want to end up with them. And once they're as popular and as bred as readily as all the other scrub pythons, I'll throw in the towel and be like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, well, that'll be a heck of a day when that comes. But yeah, I mean, I have so many people who ask me about Tanimbars, which is interesting to kind of see how trends come and go, because prior to like 2017, they were available. Like you were saying earlier, you could get them on an import list for, $300 or something like that.
Yep.
And that wasn't a rare occurrence. It's just funny how that works sometimes, where it takes a snake going away for people to kind of, for it to be like more prominent in the eyes of the community. I just think that, but sometimes it kind of makes sense. If you see something all the time, you might not pay too much attention to it.
And they're, like we're talking about the reputation, people,
Sure.
if you want a pet snake or you want something to look at, green shirt python will sit on a stick. A Tanimbar or Classilepis, while caught, will try and he'll break his face trying to get out and smack at the last, right? So I think it did take some people to come into the hobby, like you, like Devin Means, like so many others. There's like, yes, I'm going to put in the time and I'm putting the work because I actually like these snakes. And if that means I can't touch them, all right, so be it. But the well-being and further having them and keeping them and spreading them in the hobby is more important. And I think that's happening now. Yeah, I paid less than $400 for my animals, but now you can't find them.
Yeah, which I kind of like, because I feel like that slightly higher price tag is going to bring the right people to the table. I think if there were some Classilepis that were available a few years back that were like Bowman's prices.
Yep.
And I thought that was just about the worst thing that could happen to the scrub hobby, is that these snakes get seen as like some sort of trophy, that someone wants one of to put on their Instagram or their TikTok. I think there's a happy medium of like a price point to where if you're inquiring about a snake that's $1,000, $2,000 or whatever, you're more than likely not a total idiot. Either that or you're an idiot with money, which is probably better than an idiot without money buying a snake. But then not to where you can't pair that snake up eventually, or where it's so cost prohibitive where it's like, well, I can get one, but two would be impossible. Kind of like what we've seen with Boland's pythons. Because we have so few captive bred up until kind of the last few years, these animals they're vitally important for the future within the hobby,
Yeah, and that's why I want to establish that group for myself. And I don't see anything wrong if you want to have a scrub python as a pet and keep it really well, right? Absolutely. And don't breed it. I think Tanibars are beautiful. They're perfect size. They're not too big. Mine live in a 3x2x2, and that's all they'll probably need, honestly. I will upgrade them, but it's more like I want to have a bigger cage with all of them, like portals and all that fancy stuff. But they're that's Goldilocks size, I think.
Yeah.
They're good display snakes. So I want to have someone be able to buy a snake again that's affordable, but not cheap, and then be like, yeah, I'm going to put in the time and the work and the space so I can sit in my living room and look at it, because they are personable. They're very personable.
For sure. So once you get yourself to that point where like the group's established, you're good on that front. That's no longer a concern. Do you have like a certain trait you would like to refine within them, or like once you're at step 2, I guess step 1 is breeding them. Step 2, you're at the point where you want to be. What's step 3 as far as your progression with the Tanimbars?
Honestly, I haven't thought about it that far ahead.
Sure.
I know they have their they're very variable, of course, and they have their mutations, the xanthic, axanthic, patternless. I do like the patterns more than I like the patternless. The xanthics, that yellow, it's really beautiful. So I wouldn't mind having a group of them, but whether or not I'm necessarily focusing on a specific look like I do the carpet pythons, I don't see myself doing that, just because they are tough to breed in the first place. So on top of that, having a line breeding project, I don't know how good it will be, how easy it will be, I guess. And then in terms of lineages and in terms of genetic diversity, that wouldn't be too good to do.
Sure.
In order to do a well line breeding project, in my eyes, you have to breed within related animals.
It makes it a lot more difficult to not do that.
Yeah. Right. And then, yeah, I want to keep as much diverse group as I can, instead of, having mom to baby and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the most kind of beautiful parts about where we're at with scrub pythons right now, is we have the ability to do that for a long time. As imports are still a thing. They're not nearly in the numbers that they used to be, but they're routinely available. Like I think I figured one time I could make like F10 unrelated bar necks if I wanted to.
Wow.
To me, it's like that's you sacrifice that really nitpicky line breeding. But I think to be able to not have to fix problems retroactively, a la granite Pop One carpets, is something that if we can start it off right, we'll be thanking ourselves in 20, 30 years,
Right. And I'm already seeing kinking and eggs that are not viable, but they look like they're shelled. So I don't want to add more genetic gunk into the mix.
Yeah, fair enough. Before we get onto a kind of a different part of the Tanimbar talk, Brandon wants to know if they seem stressed out just by like your presence, or if you try to go to handle them, like where do you see these stressors coming out?
So it depends on the individual. My xanthic boy and my female, they will be stressed if I try to reach out for them. If I am reaching out for their food, their water bowl, or if they're tucked in their hide and I'm going to spot clean, that doesn't seem to bother them.
Okay.
It's if I'm directly going to touch them or move them around, but that's because they've been established for a long time, right? They know who I am. They know my routine. The baby, now he's to the point where he's not being aggressive when he sees me, but he is kind of sort of begging for food, which is kind of cute. But if I'm going to go touch him or pick him up, then he's like, no, don't do that. KJ's boy, he's I don't know, he's cruising right now. He went into his hide. He's probably going to see. So when I am here in the room, he does cruise and looks around. I don't think he's stressed at all. I think he's the type of snake that he's used to being out. And KJ used to tell me he used to take him out and interact with them. So stressors is more when you invade their personal space.
Yeah.
For animals that are established.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I don't often like to remove the tannin bars when I'm cleaning them if I don't have to. Like if they're sitting on top of shit or a shed, okay,
Right.
that is what it is. But unfortunately, a couple of my rooms have carpet in it, and oftentimes pulling some of these tannin bars out requires some carpet cleaning afterward.
Mhm.
But yeah, I have found that if I don't touch them, they're really gonna just sit there.
Yep.
They might look at you, but move the hair with the hook a little bit, grab the water bowl or whatever, which is nice because some pythons are not that way. They see you
Mhm.
and they're ready to go.
Mhm. And I usually have like not a shield, but I use a tote or something as a shield. So I put it in front of my whatever I'm gonna go get, and then I just grab it. So just less for them to see, right? Less stressors,
Yeah,
and not that I am stressing them out by doing that. I'm just eliminating the any stressors that I think
sure.
it could be, right?
Yeah.
And the carpet stuff, yeah, I have Chilobrothos boas, Caribbean boas, and those, yeah, touching them and they don't like it. Yeah, your whole carpet looks like you drop a bunch of eggs, like chicken eggs on it. Gross.
Yeah, no, that's not fun. Yeah, I experienced the same thing with the Halmaheras. They're
Okay.
very much like that too, where some of the barnecks and stuff, and a lot of it's just kind of curiosity or feeding response, but they're not sitting still while they're checking you out, or the class
Okay.
Telepus. They're they're a lot more curious right off the bat. So after your first year breeding Tannimbars, like, okay, I got the clutch. You said that you had some complications with the babies that first go around.
The first go around, there were 6 eggs.
Okay,
All 3 times she's given me 6 eggs. Oh, so it's
there you
nice. 6 eggs. I think 2 of them were infertile. Like they're clearly infertile.
go. Okay,
2 of them were shelled, but they didn't look like they have any veins.
yeah,
And then 2 of them, they went the distance. One was severely kinked and died in the egg, and the other one tried to pip and then drown. What's also kinked. So none of those babies survived.
okay,
The second clutch, again, 6 eggs. All 6 eggs looked viable, and all 6 eggs went the distance. But 2 of them were kinked. One of them pipped, and he was kinked. The other one was still in the egg, and he also looked severely kinked. The other 4 survived up until. So I was living in Iowa. I moved to Minnesota, and I moved to an apartment. And my temperatures in my room were cooler than they're usually in my house.
okay,
So their heat spot, I didn't double check their heat spot, and the heat spot was cooler than I would keep them, being like it was probably 83, and I would rather to have that at around 88, so they can be in the hot spot and they wanted to.
okay.
And I had them in loose cocoa fiber, the really loose stuff. 3 of them, I found one dead. Then the next day I found the other one, and then the next day I found the other one. All 3 died back to back to back. So I kind of tried digging around. I opened 2 of them. One thing that I noticed was their fat storage was a lot that more than what I would think a baby, a couple months old that I've had less than 5 meals would have.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that was what happened. It's just something that for me it's like, should they have this much fat
yeah.
as this age?
Seems strange.
And then another one had it seemed like it had stomach issues, and then the third I couldn't open. I found them later. The one surviving baby, mind you, they didn't give me any like prior signs that they were sick or anything. They actually took a meal before they started dying, so I didn't even know that nothing was wrong with them. The final baby that he's still alive right now, she's still alive right now. She had I checked her, took her out, and I noticed that she had mouth rot, so I treated that, eliminated the COCO whatsoever, and now she's still alive. She's doing great. So from that, I don't have all the answers, and I don't necessarily know what happened, but what I think is low room temperatures and not enough heat for them to, if they were having irritations and problems ingesting that COCO, they couldn't, their metabolic rate was low enough that they couldn't fight any of those infections. So I think those two in combination took the 3 out sooner than I could have, I didn't have any signs. And then that third one, I found them early enough that I could correct those actions, put a higher a heat spot, and give him antibiotics for the mouth rot. And all I did was triple antibiotic on the mouth, clean the mouth. Okay. And then now he's on paper, or she's on paper, and she's been doing great. And that happened last year in the summer at some point.
Interesting. Yeah, these snakes aren't straightforward.
Yeah.
Eggs seem to be touchy sometimes. Babies can be difficult to either get started or to keep them going. And yeah, they're not ball pythons, But yeah. And I commend you for sharing your experiences, because it's
of course,
all rainbows and butterflies, and we'd like to think it is sometimes, but these things do happen, and they suck really bad.
Yeah, and I want people to not be discouraged. Like it happens, right? We as human make keeper errors. These snakes are rare for a reason, right? Like you said, and if we share our ups and our downs, we can all learn from that, and collectively, we can find what was it, right, or what triggered it. Yeah,
I almost wonder if it's some sort of like metabolic thing because of the fat stores and then the kinking, like some sort of in the egg metabolic issue where whatever development they were supposed to go through just didn't progress the way it was supposed to. Because it definitely, I feel like they seem related to me. If they're, the spine didn't develop right, the way that they're not using their calories the way they're supposed to, where they're putting on excess fat. I mean, being that young, presumably from the yolk even as well. Because I've had issues with losing eggs quite a bit. But last year, it was probably the coolest baby snake I've ever hatched. Was a barneck, and it came out with a deformed skull, kinked tail, and it was born prolapsed.
Oh.
I mean, it was like a deep purple as a baby. It was so cool. And sometimes I wonder, like, why that happened. And I had siblings that were perfect. Another sibling that looked kind of similar to it that I still have was born small and with a little bit of a kink at the end of her tail, but like nowhere near where it would affect anything. Because to me, if an egg is right next to another in incubation and one comes out perfect and the other comes out with an issue, I can't imagine that's an incubation problem.
Yeah. Yep.
It has to have been something that happened in the development process, probably when the female was gravid. And the only thing that from that clutch that I could think was that she was in a shorter cage than some of the rest of my breeders, and all my cages have shelves in the back of them, like for basking. And because it was a shorter cage, she was kind of closer to the heat panel, but it was like a wider heat panel. And I wonder if it just wasn't a concentrated enough spot.
Okay.
Because I went the panel route as opposed to doing bulbs, and I don't know if that was the best call in hindsight, but here I am 50 cages later, and I don't think I'm going to change it. I'm just going to work with what I have.
Yeah, you can make work. All my cages except for those two are heated with panels.
Yeah. But what I have found though is that my best clutches have been from females that had smaller panels.
Okay. And
that would kind of be as close as I guess you could get to a light bulb.
What's the wattage that you're using?
Oh shoot. It's whatever like the second size of the Vivarium Electronics ones are. They're like,
I use the first size. So I'm using a smaller concentrated, right? Like you're saying.
I have have those in these cages because I bought the wrong ones, and I was
Okay.
like, oh shit, are those even too small? But then after this year, I'm like, those might be perfect.
Because that's my thought. I've heard if it's too big, the whole cage it's heated. So I wanted something that it's just where they're gonna sit.
Yeah.
They want to sit in the cool spot, they can go on the other side.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm still dialing all that in too, but I do wonder if those bigger panels were causing those some issues for me. But
I'm thinking it could also be something to do with their food. Like maybe there's vitamins or some sort of nutritions that they are lacking from that in combination with heat requirements, right? Maybe we're not heating, maybe they need to be 90 degrees, but only for 2 hours or in a corner, right?
yeah. I think as far as basking temperatures go, I think for a while there was a little bit too much like it needs to be 90 or 88 specifically, but like in the wild, these snakes are gonna kind of poke out of the brush for a little while, get hit with the sun super hard, and then retreat back in, which would lend more to the hotter, more concentrated basking spot. Because I think that was one of the thoughts would be kind of contradictory. Would be, well, if it's only hitting this small section because you have a small panel or a bulb, then the rest of the follicles that are over here aren't getting heated. But I almost think it might be the opposite, where that kind of uniform basking might not be very natural for them.
Yeah. So if you think about the other animals and how they cool themselves or how they heat themselves, elephants, for example, when they're cooling themselves, they help their blood, right? They put them in their ears, and that's what regulates. So it could be the same with the snake, right? They only have one piece, or the head, and then they bring that hot blood from that part of their body into the other parts of their body. So the blood is what brings that heat source into the follicles and all that. So that way their whole body actually heats without having to be sitting down in the heat.
I didn't know that. That's actually really that makes sense, but it's very interesting to think of it that way. Yeah, because I also have a decent sized rattlesnake collection, and I have like the little spotlights on all of them. And you could temp gun a female sitting under that light at 110 degrees.
Wow.
But it's a more limited period, and they kind of have their patterns where the lights turn on slowly. They make their way to the basking site. They're sitting there, light goes off, cruise for a bit, go away for the rest of the night. Seeing that kind of made me think, as far in terms of my pythons, like, okay, it can't be that different. They're all snakes at the end of the day.
Yep.
So the fact that I'm treating this group of animals and this group of animals entirely differently, one of them is probably more right than the other. And it was interesting to me just to see a more natural behavior pattern, because there aren't many things that we can do in captivity to really get natural behavior patterns out of snakes, but that limited basking availability, at least in the rattlesnakes, seemed to do it for me, which had me definitely kind of pondering how to translate that into pythons.
You can still do that. Going back to the Tanimbars, she was in one of the vision cages that had the light, and the light came up in the morning and then turned off and then came out before lights off. And she would come out of the hide, go bask, and then go back into her hide. And she did that every day until she laid her eggs. So having that time of like heat, like spot heat for X amount of time, I think it's very beneficial for them. Before I moved, I was leaning towards having a light on, basking light for X amount of time during the morning and then before bedtime. And I did that a little bit before I moved, and I saw the behavior on the snakes. They came out, seek the light, then done, back to the cold spot. They weren't there all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and they probably shouldn't be. And
Yep.
Jeremy has a good point about this with blackhead pythons. Literally evolved to have like a solar panel on their head,
Yeah.
where they use that to warm the rest of their body. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but something like that, knowing that about blackhead pythons, you can apply that to the rest of what we're doing. And I forget where it was brought up, but someone somewhere, I don't know if it was in a comment here or just a private conversation, brought up maybe that's the purpose of these females going dark during while being gravid. Which is interesting because like with ball pythons, the opposite happens, where they get super light when they're gravid. But that would make sense. And it would also make sense if they're living in deep canopy cover where availability of direct basking is a lot more limited, where if you have this almost black coil sticking out of the tree during these 3 hours of the day or whatever, where you're getting direct sunlight, that would be enough to heat up the rest of you, because you have that ability to take in all that heat with the darker coloration.
Yeah. And ball pythons live in a totally different environment, right? And exactly. they're escaping the heat, right? Going into tunnels and all that, instead of seeking the heat.
Right. Yeah. Which is, it makes sense when you lay it all out. But before you go through the whole thought process, it's like, it kind of makes you scratch your head for a minute, but then you think it all through and you're like, okay, this is all coming together.
But I think that's why it's the context of the animal that we're looking at, and where they live, and how the years of evolution of what makes them tick. I think it's important. That's why I like to listen to the CCR a lot, the colibroid, right? Those people, mix both together. What's happening in the wild, what's happening in captivity. It really can shine a light on a lot of the things that make us scratch our head, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So after your second year, going into your third year, so when did you take the year off of breeding? Was that between clutch 1 and clutch 2?
Yes, between clutch 1 and clutch 2. So clutch 1 it was 2020. I tried 2020. No, it was 2021. 2022, nothing happened, and then 2023 was the one last year.
So you tried in 2022 just to no avail.
Yes.
What was different about that year that you think caused them?
I didn't focus on giving her the enough food, like the big meals.
Okay.
I thought she had enough. And for some reason I'm like, I don't want to give her food. She might, not develop. Somehow I don't know where this train of thought happened, but if you feed your female while she's gravid or while she's developing, she's gonna reabsorb, or it's too big of a meal, she's not gonna throw eggs. And that stuck with me for some reason. And that year I'm like, okay, she's good. And I didn't feed her. This year, honestly, I said to myself, and if she gives me the right signs, I'll pair her, but I'm not going to push it. I still cycled her, but with me moving and how different this place is, I thought she wasn't going to go.
Okay.
But she kept giving me the signs. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll keep going. And she threw eggs again. So.
Okay. So she bred the year of moving.
Yes, she did.
Seems to be a theme. The 2 times that I have moved, I've had good success after that. Alexandra, who produces the Barneck Maruki crosses, she bred hers after moving, after not having success, and Rob Christian as well. So
I bred 2 times in Iowa in my house.
Okay.
And the last of that was 2023, and then this year 2024 she bred here in the new place, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess the key is, if you want to be a scrub python breeder, you just have to move once every year or two, and it'll be okay.
Yep. Just flip it around. Just even if you move apartments, go up and down, you'll be good.
So after she laid her clutches, what was your strategy to put the size and weight back on her?
Honestly, just normal python. She dropped 2 weeks ago, and I still haven't fed her. I've been busy and all that, but she doesn't look like she lost any weight. She still looks perfect. So I'm not too worried about it. This weekend or maybe tomorrow, I'll probably feed her again, and then I'll give her 2 meals back to back, saying wait about 5 days to 7 days.
Okay.
Probably give her either 2 or 3 chicks or a small chicken, and that should be good. I mainly keep an eye on how they look physically. Do they look round? Do they look square? Do they look tapered?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking at.
Okay.
These what I've noticed with them is they're a little bit like a loaf of bread, like boas. They're boreal, right? So they're not rounded, but they're especially going to their belly. It's kind of like flat and square. So you want that kind of shape, like kind of domey and then flat. If they start being like too round all around, then you know you're going too far.
Yeah. Okay.
And same if they look like they're V and then you're getting too skinny, and you start seeing their ribs, and just feed a little bit too more.
Okay.
But it's easy to give your animal more food. It's difficult to hold back that food and not have them develop fat storage. So I'm not afraid of like, oh, it's been a month, I need to feed you. Here's your food. I'd rather do that than be like, okay, here's 2, 3. You don't need these calories, but I'm going to give them to you anyways. I think that's more detrimental.
Yeah. So reason I ask is I've tried on a number of occasions to repeat females, and I haven't been successful yet. Mm-hmm. The closest I've gotten was with my Wamina clutch this year. The female slugged out last year. So she slugged out last year, but had a good clutch this year. Mm-hmm. I've yet to have successful back-to-back clutches, despite trying many times. But hearing you say that, I think I might actually be feeding them too much again after laying, and not giving them that food cycle that a female that hadn't just laid would be getting.
Right.
So
I think that's a key thing. You're only feeding them to keep them healthy, right?
Of course.
But when you're going to cycle, that's when you're going to give them the lot of food. If you give them in that off, they're just going to put them into fat storage. They're not going to put them into developing in those follicles.
Right. Yeah, and I think I made a mistake last year of doing a little bit too much off-season feeding. Mm-hmm. Nothing crazy, but I probably could have put another week or 2 in between those meals, and mm-hmm. and then when it comes time to push the food to them, they have probably a bit more fat storage than they need. Therefore, those calories probably aren't going to be entirely pushed towards those eggs. They're probably going to keep a little bit of it back because they have so much excess energy as it is.
Yeah, and I think it also takes energy, right, to convert that fat into energy again. So maybe that it's more difficult to do that than be directly your food into eggs.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. I mean, losing weight for anything is difficult,
right.
But particularly reptiles that have low metabolisms that can almost completely shut down, in the right conditions. Yeah, that can be quite the challenge.
And I'm not thinking or planning on pairing her back to back, but again, if she's giving me the signs, I'm not going to say no to her throwing a male in there, right?
Yeah. So this coming year, that's your same approach, is just see what she does, and if it looks good, it looks good, and if not, then
yep, just read what she's doing and her behavior, and if she wants to go again, then I'll give her the opportunity and see if she does. If she not, that's fine. We'll try again some other time. I have a lot of other things that I kind of want to try too. So, but I wouldn't say no to another Tanimbar clutch. I am surprised that she hasn't given me more than 6 eggs though. 3 clutches, 6 eggs. She is definitely bigger than she was right on her first clutch.
Okay.
But it's always 6 eggs.
Do you know like what Nick and people like, you know, who've produced them in the past, how big their clutches were?
I have not. For some reason I remember Chris, I think it was in 12, 14.
Oh, really? Well,
And
his
I think
is giant though. His,
yes,
his was like 9 or 10 feet.
Yes, it's a huge female. And
Yeah.
then there was a guy in Europe. I forgot his name. He was having success around the same time as Chris was.
Okay.
He also had a huge female, and I think there were also 10 to 14 eggs. My female is, I want to say, maybe a little bit over 5 feet, but not huge.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's it's so crazy to me that you know that these scrubs can produce at such different sizes. Like, you know, your female is a 5-foot female and a 10-foot female. That 10-foot female is not twice the size of the 5-foot female. She's 10 times the size of the 5-foot. You know, that's just, yeah, it's amazing to me. Like my smallest barn neck I've gotten eggs from was like just under 8 feet, but then I've gotten 12-foot females. You know, laying.
I think age and maturity is key. The development of internal organs to be mature, right? Yeah, for sure. And it seems to me, at least from my experience, that you really can't push them to breed younger. It just doesn't work as much as some people might like it to. But I think that's bodes well for us in the long term. You can't just power feed a female up to age at 3 years old or the size, get a clutch. That's going to create a lot more longevity in this than it would otherwise. It's not normal. It's not for them to grow through that. And they might develop quickly. They might throw eggs, but it's that live fast, die young kind of strategy, right?
Yeah.
Produce eggs quickly because I got all the energy quickly, and then I'm done.
Especially for a snake that responds very poorly to high body fat. Ball python or reticulated python, they can get really, really fat.
Yeah.
And not, you know, they'll be okay, not great, but, you know, you have some older animals that are pretty fat. But scrub pythons do not seem to last too long at a really overweight size. So I guess on that topic, what's your strategy with raising these animals from when they're young? Because I have my thoughts on it, but I also know that people do it a lot of different ways. So like from meal size, meal frequency, when you dial it up, when you dial it back, how do you approach that?
Yeah, so that I'm still thinking and developing that, because I raised the male that I got from Nick. He was a hatchling, so I did raise him, and I honestly don't remember how often I fed him, but I did feed him rodents more than I fed him bird prey as when he was growing up. The female was already 1.5 years, so she already had some size. She was already grown up. The babies that I'm growing, knowing the fat content that I had on that baby that I did that necropsy, they were first feeding on hopper mice. They were taking hopper mice straight out of the egg.
Okay.
Very voracious babies.
Wow.
They never said no. So I was pretty happy with that. Yeah. But now seeing that, I am switching over to giving them almost exclusively bird prey. So I'm giving them bottom quail. If I have a chicken that lost a chick that lost the head, I caught the chicken, give them chicken. The half developed baby quail in the egg, give some of those. Not the egg, but take the hatchling out and give them that. But I'm trying to eliminate rodent prey as much as I can.
Okay.
Just because it's such a fatty item. I believe these, and you correct me if I'm wrong, compared to the other scrub python, the other species in that genus, these seems to be the most arboreal out of them all. Like they're the more Amazon tree boa like in terms of like skinny, long, the kind of square head. But you tell me, because I don't have experience with the other the other species.
Sure. I would say probably, generally speaking, yes. You know, I only have a couple adults, so I'm a lot of mine are still younger, raising them up. But you know, from what I've seen in other people's collections, you know, I would say that's probably true. Yeah, where they're, you know, a lot more arboreal and probably proportionally a bit more on the slender side.
Yeah, so I think that lends itself, being arboreal, right, to be more skinny and more slender, and not being that heavy bodied. And we've seen animals that are huge, and you can have them, but
Right.
I don't think that's what their body type wants to be, anyways.
Right. And if they do get that big, maybe they get that big at 15 years old, or,
Right.
you know, something like that. Because, and I think there's, with a lot of things, but with scrub pythons too, there's a, you know, this is, I think, a big thing with the whole dwarf, super dwarf retic phenomenon of like reproductive size versus full size. It's not the same.
Yeah.
And these snakes, they keep growing, albeit probably very slowly. But a snake that's 6 years old and 8 feet long might be 13 years old and 12 feet long. And it just, a lot of that growth is just front loaded because that's how things grow. And especially like their head size, I have adult amethystina that are like the same length, but one male will have a head that's twice the size of the other male, but twice the age of the other male. And I think that gets overlooked a lot too, of you know, oh, this snake is however big. It's like, okay, well, give it some time. It doesn't need to be a giant, but just because it's breeding at 5 feet long doesn't mean that it'll always be 5 feet long. That thing might be 6.5 feet long when it's full grown. But yeah, I think that at the end of the day, I think the diet definitely is very important. For me, at least, I've raised up a handful of different clutches of amethystina now. And I personally feel that you can't really overfeed them until they're about 2 years old. Okay. To the point where I've had animals that I didn't produce, but that I acquired when they were young, and then put them on the same feeding schedule as ones that I produced. Fast forward 4 years later, there's like a 20% size discrepancy. I think that the growth at a young age dictates the continued growth, food regimen aside.
Okay.
I think this kind of goes across the board, but with other python species, I think that there's some of the mindset of, you know, feeding less is applied too young with some pythons, to where, okay, when this carpet python, green tree python, scrub python is 4 years old, yeah, if you're feeding it every week, that's crazy. That doesn't mean you should be feeding it every 3 to 4 weeks when it's a neonate. If you think about where these are coming from, they're probably staying really close to the ground, and their prey is probably, you know, plentiful bottom of the food chain species. It wouldn't be shocking to me if these little scrub pythons might take down 2-3 meals in a week sometime. And to me, they're more robust. Their heads grow at a more steady clip compared to their body. Like, I've received some captive bred animals at like 2 or 3 years old that were in what I would call underfed. They have the head of a 2 or 3 year old and the body of like a 10-month-old. And that just doesn't seem right to me. You know, and by the time I have some of these animals that are now like 6 years old, they probably should be pushing 9 feet. They're like 6.5 feet, despite my efforts to get them back on track.
I'd rather, though, have that small animal that may need to catch up or might stay small than an animal that, you know, might not lose that baby fat. Because I've seen it in some of my older carpet pythons no longer with me. They fed a lot back in that time, and they never really lost that baby fat, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. And then I think that you just got to strike that balance of what size and age is it, like, okay, this is where weekly meals have to stop, or you run into problems. And I'll even see it with some of the animals I'm raising up where, like, I have them feeding regularly, but then I'll intentionally give them a few weeks off.
Right.
And you can kind of see their body reset a bit.
Yep.
By the end of it, their back third is thin, but like still solid. And it's interesting. It's like they keep using the excess that they have, and their body kind of evens itself out. I think I definitely agree with what you say about them not losing that baby fat.
I think peak and slopes is how I look at it, you know? Sure. Yeah, there's times where there's plentiful and you get 2-3 meals, but then there's times they're not. And then they come and goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to me, this is part of the fun of kind of figuring out what's best practices for these snakes.
Yeah. And everyone preaches this and I agree with it. Not every room is the same, and we can all have success doing a lot of different things, and we can be contradictory in what we're doing, and we're still being successful, right?
Yeah. I know that firsthand now because I grew up in Chicago, lived in the Midwest until the fall, and now I live in the desert, and I've had to change a lot of how I do things
to
accommodate. And I'm still learning every day, especially now that we're in the summertime and it's, 95 degrees and 10% humidity every day. Where back, in Illinois or Indiana, it was, 80 degrees and 65% humidity.
Right.
And, nothing ever needed to be sprayed in the summer. Everything was always perfect. And now I'm like, I got to do 3 times a week sometimes to even just maintain.
Plus a humidifier in the room, right? Yeah.
Yep, that too. I have some animals that are kind of like out in the open in the house, and humidifier doesn't work quite so well. But yeah, like in my adult scrub room, I actually have 2 humidifiers because one couldn't keep up with it. It's a struggle, but hey, this is what we signed up for,
Yeah, that's why you sit back, you look at your animals and see what they're telling you, and adjust from there.
Yep. So, any interest in getting into any other types of scrub pythons in the future?
If I get the opportunity, I will get those Moluccans, those Plastolipus. Other than that, I don't have interest in the other scrub pythons, just because they're outside of the size range that I keep. I've heard Moluccans you can keep not huge, they're like the middle. There's like Tanimbar small, Moluccans, and then I don't know how Moharas, but I'm not.
Moharas are definitely a middle ground. So
okay.
I have my hot take on Moluccans is I think the second largest scrub behind the Australian scrubs, the Kinghorn.
Oh, okay, wow.
The second largest scrub python I've had was a Moluccan.
Okay.
It was like over 12 foot, and its head was about big.
Gotcha.
I have a friend who got a fresh wild caught adult that was 14 feet long.
Wow.
I think proportionally they're the heaviest bodied of the scrub pythons, even when you consider the Kinghorn eye. I think I think some people, because they are an island species, assumed that they are a dwarf species. But then if you look at like the Sulawesi reticulated pythons,
of course,
reticulated pythons, island dwarfism and giganticism both happen.
Right, of course.
So I think that they're comparable to Amethystina at the end of the day, just a little bit heavier bodied. But one thing I have not really seen is success breeding from smaller females, like in the 7-8 foot range. I have yet to have a viable clutch of class 11s, but of people like in Europe who are breeding them and Canada and whatnot, I haven't seen a clutch from a smaller female yet. So like I have 3 scrub pythons, 2 barnecks and a Moluccan that I acquired at about the same time, fed the same way, kept the same way. And right now that Moluccan is like 10-15% bigger than the 2 barnecks. And actually was a little bit younger than them to start out. I think similarly, Aru scrub pythons are another one that I think generally are thought to be a dwarf island species. And I had a 12-footer. I have an 11-foot female, 10.5-foot male. I think they're just as big as the rest of them.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
Which is it's interesting. And their heads are big. Aru scrub pythons have big heads, which to me tells me that they're not too big, that they're supposed to be this size, because at the same size, their heads are 20% bigger than a comparable barneck. It just, I don't know, I find it interesting. But what I will say though, to your point, I think Halmaheras are that second tier of size. The biggest one I've ever had was about 8 to 8.5 foot. And actually he went to Shane Adamson about 2 years ago and was the size of, I think, both of his clutches last year, if not definitely one of them. But yeah, he was a beast of a snake, really big head, but proportionally smaller than all of my adult Amethystina. And like right now, I don't think I have an 8-foot Halmahera. I think that my biggest ones are all around 7 foot.
Okay. That's not too bad.
No.
I would say these would, maybe a female can get close to that if you have maybe my female in a couple of years, 7 feet, but a skinny 7 feet maybe.
Right. Yeah. My biggest Tanimbar is like just shy of 7 feet.
Okay.
But thin. But I got her as an adult wild caught probably about a year ago at this point. So I gave a really half-assed shot to breeding her when I moved, and she wasn't even like routinely feeding yet, and she needs a little more time to settle in. But yeah, it is definitely interesting how variable some of these can be as adults within a species, where like the snake is essentially done growing and you're like, yeah, this is where you are. Like I have a female barneck that has produced for me twice, and she's probably like 8.5 feet right now, and she was like 7.5 feet when she had her first clutch.
Okay.
But she had 14 eggs. Like she had a good size clutch.
Nice.
Where like I have some females that are significantly larger than her that like dropped 11 eggs.
Interesting. Is she older, like more mature?
No, she's young.
Interesting.
I got her when she was probably 4 to 5 years old. She bred the following year, and then took a year off and bred again this year. So no, she's a young snake.
Okay.
Yeah, she was ready.
She's ready. Give her a go, you know.
And like conversely, I had another barneck that I acquired a little bit later. She was probably like a year and a half older than that girl. She was probably like 8.5 foot when I got her, like probably about 6 years old. Nothing the first year, nothing the second year. She saw like 5 proven males. I was like, what are you doing? And then this year dropped a clutch for the first time. It's like,
do you know, like, or do you have an idea of what you did or what was different?
In that particular instance, with what made her go now compared to then, honestly, no. I was a lot more focused on my cycling this year because I kind of had to, because I moved in October.
Okay.
So I kind of used the move as like the beginning of the cycle. Which is why I think I got clutches earlier than a lot of other people did, where my first clutch was at the beginning of February. But yeah, a lot like a a longer period without food, much
Mm-hmm.
colder than I had before. And you know, out of necessity, but kind of trying to take advantage of the situation to be able to
Right.
get
Yeah.
anything in a
Mm-hmm.
year of moving, especially, you know, it was like a 22-hour move.
Wow.
So, you know, it wasn't down the street. But as far as that particular female goes, I really have no idea. I think with her it was just, she just wasn't ready at a younger age. Like she needed to be 8, 9 years old before she started breeding, and that was just her.
Yeah, in all these animals, a lot of these animals, they live to be what, 20, 30 years old.
Yeah.
And we are impatient and we want them to breed at 3 years old. Well,
Yeah.
if they're going to leave 20, 30 years old, are they going to be mature at 3, right? Maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
It's more, or maybe older. Who knows?
I'm curious to see what comes of breeding some of these F1 animals. Because my first clutch of Barnecks are approaching 4 years old now, and they're decent size. I think the males are all going to be ready to breed this year. I don't think the females will quite be. But I wonder if they're going to be a little bit more kind of clockwork than the wild caught animals.
Yeah, a little bit easier to get into the mood, kind of thing. Yeah.
Or just they more routinely breed when they're 6 years old. Or
okay, gotcha.
Or, you know, I guess who knows, but that'll be an interesting one as far as, you know, because there's got to be some Marukis that are approaching breeding age that have been produced in the last, you know, 4, 5, 6 years. And, you know, my Barnecks and Barnecks from other people who've produced them, Tanimbars, you know, it'll be cool to see. I'm definitely excited about what the future has to hold. A cool one will be when some of the Halmaheras that were from that first city zoo, when they're big enough, because they got close, because that was 2019.
Yeah, you're right. It's that's how we got ball pythons everywhere, right? Domestication and F1s and got easier, and F2s got easier, and now who knows how much generation we have captive born ball pythons, right?
Oh yeah, too many to 20.
Yeah. And they're easy. They don't have a season. You just put them together and they breed.
Yep. Yeah, maybe one day we'll just have factory farms of scrub pythons. And
if enough of us are doing it, and they put the time and the effort and pump out captive born individuals, eventually with time we can do it.
Yeah, I think it'll hit a happy medium where, like, because for me at least, what I see, a lot of people, I don't have a lot of people reach out like wanting to acquire a big collection of scrub pythons.
No. Yeah.
Most of the time it's like, I want a pet or I want a pair, and breeding down the line would be cool. And I think that's a cool mindset to have, because as we've seen with a lot of people who've bred them, 2 scrub pythons is enough to breed scrub pythons. You know, you don't need a massive collection or a facility or whatever. And so I think some sort of cool middle ground of like hobbyist breeders being really into it. I think that's a cool path forward for them.
All you need is the time and the dedication to put into these animals, and you can do it. You can also do it.
The dedication's a big one. Not giving up after year 1 or 2 or 3 of not making it work. You know, because it's easy to see you posting. You know, you can scroll on your page and see multiple clutches of Tanimbar scrub pythons, and like, oh, look at this! It happens all the time for this guy. But you know, that up front doesn't show everything that went into it, and inevitably it's not going to. But I think that
I acquired her in 2016, and I didn't try until 2020. Didn't even think about it until 2020.
Yeah, I mean, you're almost 10 years into the project, and probably still feels like it's in its infancy, despite all the success you're having. Which
it is
cool, because if it would suck if you felt like you were done. Like, damn, there went all my fun. So
It definitely still is in its infancy. I still need to. If I had maybe, I don't know, 20 Tanimbar babies in the rack, then I'll be like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. But there's only one in there, so I still have a lot to climb. Still have a lot to do.
yeah, well, I have a feeling in a couple of years, it'll look a little bit different than it does today. I think you're gonna maybe have that rack full of 20 Tannimbars.
That's what I'm inspiring to.
Hell yeah. Well, I want to pivot to a different topic because just scrolling through your page and whatnot, your West Indian boas, they jump off that page.
Thank you.
So talk about your collection of West Indian bows a little. Which species do you have, and what's it like? Because I've really never.
Of course. They remind me a lot of that Morelia complex, including the scrub pythons.
Okay.
Their head are really big. The scalations are very well defined. They're very curious. They know who I am, as cliche as that sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a connection with the Caribbean stuff because I am from Puerto Rico also. Yeah. So I wanted to have those animals for sentimental reason also.
For sure.
So currently I have Puerto Rican boas.
Okay.
I have a group of those. I have a group of Jamaican boas. I had a group of Dominican Republic boas, the red mountain boas, as they call them.
Yep.
But I got rid of the adults, and I only have one baby that I produce from that. I decided right now I'm not going to pursue that endeavor into breeding them, but I still wanted to keep them, so I kept that baby. Okay. I have a female Berry Island boa, which is an island in the Bahamian chain, so it's also in the Bahamian complex.
Okay.
I also had a group of that. I decided to also back off all that, and I only have that female. She's, I think, 2.5 years. She's still small. And then I have a group of Cuban boas. I have 3 boys and 2 girls. Okay. One of the girls is probably gravid. And that's another one that they get big. They're not flashy, but I think they're beautiful. They're underrated, and they're cheap, and now they're gaining popularity, and more people are looking for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's my entire group of Chilobothris boas.
Okay. Yeah, and I want to emphasize that. No one say Chilobothris. That is wrong. You are pronouncing it wrong. In Latin, that is not a ch.
Yeah, it took me a while too, until I heard someone say it, and like, oh, okay. That's how you have to do it.
Yeah, that definitely makes my skin crawl when I hear people pronounce some different Latin names that way. I want to throw that out there.
And those for me are more of a pet. I keep them. The Puerto Rican boas, I bred them into 2018. I haven't bred them since. I've had the opportunity to do it, but other people have been doing it. They're that type of animal that you can't sell outside of your own state. They're CITES 1.
Oh, okay.
And
just like the Jamaican boas.
Yes, the same as the Jamaican boa. Last time, I don't remember how many babies she had. I think she had like 12 or 18 babies. So then I had to feed all these babies, look for homes for these babies. You don't want to give them to anyone that says, yeah, give me a free Puerto Rican boa, right? So it gets, it's tricky to say the least with them. So I decided I'll keep them, breed them once in a while, but nothing that I'm going to keep going. I helped Rob Stone start some of his babies also, and disperse those babies. So I'm in that boa community, and we help each other out that way. My Jamaican boas are not big yet. I have a 1.2. I have a female that might be ready in maybe another year or two, but the boy probably not.
Okay.
And then the Cuban boas, I have one male that he's been with me since 2010, I think, and he's still here. And then I have two of his kids, a male and a female from a wild caught female. And then I have a Tom Crushfield line, and then a Czech Republic female.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, those have always really they've been interesting to me, and I've kind of just observed them from afar. I at an old job I worked with some Dominicans, and the worst snake bite I've ever taken was from a male Dominican red mountain.
Oh yeah,
it was a feeding response bite on the thumb, and it hit some nerve in a weird way. I've never felt pain like it before. It was that was brutal. They got some chompers on them, those West Indian boas.
Yeah, they do. But they remind me of, I want to see if I can take one of my smaller females out, because they remind me of rattlesnakes a little bit. Their diamond pattern in their back and how they look. 1 second. So this is one of the.
Wow.
This is one of the smaller ones, but they're iridescent, and their patterns are just you can't beat it. And if you like that wild type look in a snake, you really can't go wrong with them. They're really chill. When they're first born, they're huge babies.
Okay.
They eat hopper mice right out of without having any issues with scenting or none of that. So they're really, if you're gonna start with the Caribbean boa bug and you want something easy, I would go with them. And as we've been talking about with size and age, as they get old, they get huge. They're one of the biggest boas. But my adult boy that's 10 plus years old, he's maybe 6 foot.
Okay, not bad.
And then my female that's gravid or potentially gravid, she's 2018, and I think she's maybe a little bit shorter than him, but a little bit thicker.
Okay. That's a manageable size.
Yes, definitely. And if you're watching this, you keep scrub pythons, keeping one of these is going to be the same size. Maybe a little bit heavier body. They do like wrapping around into things, but
their color and pattern and the variety within the complex is just, it's hard to, you can kind of maybe compare it to scrubs or carpets and not a whole lot else.
Right.
With, island and locality variability, they're badass snakes.
Right. And to my Morelia people, especially carpet pythons, we have subspecies, right? And we're fighting with each other what can be elevated and whatnot. These are they're actual species. They're divided by islands. So if you like that collecting kind of click, and you like a tight niche, a group of keepers, Caribbean boa keepers are that. We were talking about keeping lines and keeping records. They do that very well because they want to have a very diverse group of animals to breed with each other. They're a very tight niche group. So I invite you, take a look at them. They're well worth your time. They're not keeled, but their scales are kind of raised a little bit, so they do have they're not totally soft like a Domeros boa will be.
Sure. So for anyone who's looking to get into the Caribbean boas, what's kind of the general price range of some of the different more common species?
So let's say a Haitian boa, which is the same as a Dominican boa, but the more drab brown look. They range anywhere. They used to be in the 150, 175. Now I think they're close to 250 to maybe 500 for a very good individual. Okay. Maybe they're getting to thousands, but honestly, I'm not the the best person to ask about the market. I have no idea what things are worth. I've been out of the market game for a long time.
But they're definitely not like a snake that's like prohibitively expensive.
No, not at all. And it's not Bolin's prices, it's not Class Lepus or even Tanimbar scrub python prices, except if you go into like these, for example. These, I alluded at first, they were $300, $150 trash snake. Nobody wanted them.
Right.
Now, last time I checked, I think $1,200 was what they were going for a baby. Wow. That also has to do with supply and demand.
Sure.
Their litters are less than 5 babies. That's
really
it. Giant babies, but there's only less than 5. I think. Her mom had 3.
Wow, it's almost like the Madagascar ground boas.
Yeah.
Despite so huge, have like what, 2 babies at a time or something like that.
But they're big babies, right? Fully developed. So it's the same here. Yeah.
Wow.
These are
that's very cool.
Almost a foot long when they're born, and they're just big babies and come out swinging.
That's so interesting because like geographically they're so close to the Corallus genus.
Mm-hmm.
Which is entirely different. Like an Amazon will drop like 15, 20 little worms.
Yep.
But then some of these Caribbean boas, like you said, five giant babies.
But that's different from the other islands. So the Cuban boa, that's the big babies, small litters. For example, the Puerto Rican boa, you can have 20, 30 babies.
Oh, okay. So it's just in the Cuban boas.
Yes, just in the Cuban boas.
Got it. Okay. Interesting.
I had a litter of Berry Island boa last year. Unfortunately, all of them were stillborns, but they were like 28 babies, tiny little worms.
Wow. Okay. So
and they're in the same genus.
Sure. That's even more fascinating.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
There's that much of a variety.
Yep.
With production. Yep. Wow. And these islands are really close together.
Yeah. Yep.
They're not far apart from each other.
There's a lot of currents in between the islands that I think did prohibit that exchange in gene flow, and that's why they speciated in the first place, right? Sure. But yeah, you're right. They're close together. You can literally take a boat ride and go to the other island, but they're very different in their behavior and their size and size litter. I'm gonna put her back real quick.
Okay. That's very interesting. Yeah, definitely not something that I would have assumed about a complex of snakes from such a similar range. When you were living in Puerto Rico, did you ever find Puerto Rican boas in the wild?
I did, yeah. I found a few. So one story that my mom likes to talk about why I'm obsessed with snakes. When I was a kid, there was a snake that was hanging around in my bedroom when I was a baby, a Puerto Rican boa. So I've seen them around growing up in my house, getting into the house. When I was a kid, I've always been obsessed with the snake. So I've had friends call me and be like, hey, there's a snake in my dad's house, or can you come get it? So I rescued a few of them. So one time I found one in the middle of the road, and I did the Steve Irwin, took it off the road. So I grew up seeing them. Only a handful though. I never. Growing up, they were always like, oh, they're endangered, they're hard to find.
Yeah.
So whenever you saw one, it was like, oh my God, there's one.
Huh. That's interesting. And where you lived, was it pretty like urban, or were you kind of on the outskirts? Or
I was. Do you know where for reference, the radio telescope that crashed not soon after the hurricane? It was in Contact. It was in Goldeneye. It was the Esperanza SETI radio telescope. So I lived 5 minutes from that. So it's kind of northwest center of the island. So I was surrounded by mountains and it was pretty forested also.
Okay.
So I saw a lot of them. Not a lot of them. I saw some of them. Now with social media and the groups, I've noticed that they're more common than the people let to believe, or at least there have been a movement to protect them, and they are encountered more often, especially in certain places, right? And it's interesting to follow those groups, because you see when the snakes are starting to get gravid and when they're starting to bask, and you see communal basking and males courting, you see when the babies, because people post, oh, I found this snake, what is it? And you knowing, right? It's like, oh, that's a gravid female. Oh, that's a bunch of males together with it. It's interesting.
That's so cool. Do they range throughout the island, or are they in a specific kind of little pocket?
They're throughout the island. Yep.
Okay.
And recently there was a study to see if there was any difference in genetic diversity within the island, because there's some population that stays closer to caves and don't really come out. There's some population in urban areas, but the gene flow throughout it's all over the place. So there's no speciation within the island.
Interesting. Are there not really like geographic barriers where this population have been isolated from here for however many?
No. And it's a small island. It's an island that's roughly 100 miles by 35 miles. So it's a tiny island. So gene flow, it's pretty easy.
Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. That'd be an awesome experience to find one of those in the wild.
There's one Puerto Rican boa. It's not called a Puerto Rican. It's called a. It is a dwarf, so it's called the Puerto Rican dwarf boa. It has a different. I think it's a Callibophus grantee, if I remember correctly. And as a kid, I didn't know that also was another species that we had in the island up until I graduated college, and through these Facebook groups, I found a guy that actually is living in my grandma's house in Puerto Rico. And he's also into snakes. He's like, yeah, we have this second boa species in the island.
Oh, wow.
That's just in this corner of the island. So that one does have a limited range. I'm like, oh, well, I need to go find it. So whenever I go back, that's one of the bucket lists I need to go find. That and a wild reticulated python, like a wild reticulated python in Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Oh, there is a population there.
There's a population of reticulated pythons. There's a population of boa constrictors in Puerto Rico. Both of those.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Huh. How long has that been a thing?
The boa constrictors have been going on for quite some time. I want to say 20-some years. The population escaped from quote unquote a zoo that we had in the island that was badly run, and they escaped from that facility. Okay. The reticulate pythons, I think that's a more recent, and I want to say less than 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
They've been talks that they were around, but now you're starting to see adults and babies, so they are reproducing actively in the island. Those, it's rumored that a drug kingpin in the island had a group of them and set them loose and set a gravid loose, and that's where we get our population, because we have tigers and we have albinos coming out from the population of, in the wild, or not in the wild, but feral. So yeah, it was probably that person.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess something like that could really start that, because it's not like the Everglades where it's Puerto Rico is probably smaller than the Everglades.
Probably, yeah.
So, I could imagine that one clutch would probably be enough to do it.
Yep. And there's enough feral pig. So Puerto Rico, it's interesting because Puerto Rico is like a Florida in terms of invasive species kind of taking over. So we have feral pigs now running around, like the Vietnamese pigs, because people, got them and then released them. And we have a lot of chickens, right? Of course. So there's a lot of invasive foods that these invasive reticular pythons and boa constrictors are actually eating. So they've been small studies that have come out that these snakes, they're invasive in the island, but they're not competing with the native stuff, and they're not eating anything harmful either. They also predate on other invasives that are in the island.
So it could be worse.
Yeah, right. Could be much worse.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Yeah. When you first said reticulated python, I thought maybe you were referring to wanting to do like an Indo trip, but no.
I don't have to go that far. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Well, that leads me to one of my wrap up questions I like to ask is about like dream herping trips. Like for you, what's the like, if I had all the means to do this, this is where I'd love to go, and this is what I want to find.
So, it might be a cliche because I keep carpet pythons. This is my bread and butter, but I would love to go to Australia. It reminds me a lot of Puerto Rico, just the way people talk and just seeing pictures. So I think that would be very nostalgic.
Okay.
Another one that recently opened up the opportunity to go is probably the Western Ghats in India. My wife is from South India.
Okay.
And she has her roots are past the south, so past the Western Ghats, and she's told me about, you know, tigers crossing the roads, and told me about elephants, and we hear king cobras, and yeah, there's cobras in the backyard. And recently I went to a wedding and I met some of her family. One of them helps tour guides and videographers do documentaries. He's like, yeah, when you come to Bangalore, just let me know. We'll take you on an excursion, and we'll show you vipers, and we'll show you cobras. So that's another place that I hopefully soon will go and get to explore around.
That's awesome.
Some herping.
That is not a typical answer to that question, but that's a really awesome answer. And,
thank you.
Especially having family ties over there. That's really neat, because that's not an experience that many people from this side of the world will probably ever get to have.
Yeah, just wait a few years. You'll see pictures of me in the Western Ghats taking pictures with a cobra. Yeah, right.
Oh man, that's awesome. So I guess the last thing I want to ask before you wrap up is just like, what are some of your longer term goals with your collection, with your breeding? Kind of what, you know, you are where you are now, you're having all the success you have. What do you want to see the future looking like for yourself?
Yeah, so I'm not going to touch too much on Tanimbars because we did a lot of that.
Yeah, we did.
With carpet pythons, I've been focusing on a specific phenotype for quite some time. Right now I'm on F3, so continuing that is part of my goal. I'm breeding that into Azantic. So okay. I've had Azantics right now, so making visuals will be my next step, and seeing if I can making F2s and F3s of visuals will make it better, will make it not. I have stripes, I have banded, so continuing that line, it's something that's passionate and that I really want to do. Another one is I have a pair of super dwarf reticulated pythons.
Okay.
The female was sired by a boy that I had back in 2009. So I've had them for a long time, and then I contact Garrett, and it's like, hey, I've had this male from old school bloodline. This bloodline's pretty much gone. Do you want to, do something together? So we figured something out, and I got a pair, a non-related male, and then that female sired by him. So that's something else that I would like to continue. She looks, I'm not saying she's anything special, but I would like to see if I can have that busy pattern that he has and she's continuing, and just breed them all overall. Reticulated pythons are a species of snake that I absolutely love, but they get too big, and having the opportunity of having them small, it's perfect. I love that. And then just be consistent on the Tanimbars, be consistent on Cuban boas, and try and bring those animals back into people's hands that they're rare now, and I don't want them to be. Yeah,
for sure. Those are some pretty awesome goals, man. Well, again, dude, thank you so much for your time tonight. This was a great conversation, and one that really can't be had with many people, especially on the Tanimbar topic. So
thank you.
I appreciate your time. For anyone who's interested in getting a hold of you or seeing what you have, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can go search either Facebook or check Instagram for Basuca Ectotherms. Okay. Basuca is Spanish for bazooka. So you can search that. Anyone that sees this, please give me a like. I've been on it for a while and I haven't broken 1,000 followers on Instagram. So let's see if we can do that this year.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I still have some carpet pythons left if anyone's interested. I will get some influx later because I have some of my females are on breeding loans. But if you're interested, just send me a note and we can talk it out.
All right. Hell yeah. Well, again, man, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to throw you backstage if you want to hang around, and I'm going to close
thank you.
But this was awesome, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. All right, guys. Well, that was it for episode 13. I love that conversation, and I always love talking scrub pythons, and to talk about a species that is so popular but yet so underrepresented with the guy who's leading the charge in the United States is a pretty special experience. For me, you can find me on Instagram at Scrub Shepherd, Facebook, just Stephen Kush. For anyone who liked this episode, check out some of the other shows here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network. There are shows every single day of the week, so there's never a lack of reptile content for you guys. Give us a subscribe on YouTube, like, share, comment, all of that good stuff. For anyone who liked the Scrub Python talk tonight, you can check out the new Somalia group on Facebook, the group we started to share information about scrub pythons and, break down the walls of any gatekeeping or whatnot that ever happened in the community. It's for anybody of any experience level. The only thing you need is to love scrub pythons. So thank you, everybody, again for tuning in tonight, and we'll see everyone here again next week. Good night.